Sometimes the summer anime season feels like a loud marketplace of ideas, where everyone is trying to shout louder than everyone else. But every once in a while, a story appears that doesn't shout at all. It just makes everything go quiet. And I can say with confidence that Demons of the Shadow Realm is exactly that kind of case. For me personally, it became the main anime of summer 2026. Also, this summer I'd really love to reach 500 subscribers on my channel, and you can actually help me with that. So make sure to subscribe because there are going to be a lot of interesting videos about tons of amazing anime here. And now, let's get back to the topic. Today, I don't really want to talk about the plot itself, but more about the feeling this story leaves behind. And honestly, there was one thing that surprised me the most as an anime fan. When we first meet Yuru, it feels like we're stepping into a classic fantasy setting. An isolated village, ancient traditions, mysterious customs, and that feeling of time standing still. Anime has told this kind of story dozens of times before. But then something completely changes. People suddenly arrive with helicopters, and the entire familiar picture literally starts collapsing right in front of your eyes. In that moment, I realized something important. The author is intentionally playing with the viewer's expectations. This isn't just a story about a hero moving from one world to another, it's a clash of worldviews. And a huge part of the atmosphere is built right on that conflict. But for me, there's one small detail that changes everything. If you think about it, this is actually how the entire shounen genre has evolved over the past decades. Back in the early 2000s, stories where humans and spirits built their relationships on trust, understanding, and emotional connection became extremely popular. One of the best examples of this remains Shaman King, where the protagonist didn't win because he had the most raw power. His strength came from understanding his spirits and becoming one with them. In Demons of the Shadow Realm, that idea unexpectedly returns. The Tsugai don't feel like emotionless tools. They have personalities, habits, and their own perspectives. Sometimes they help humans, sometimes they argue with them, and sometimes they act like they are the real main characters of the story. And that's exactly why Yuru's relationship with his Tsugai named Right and Left feels so alive. But then there's a second layer I didn't notice right away. If the emotional foundation feels similar to Shaman King, then the mechanics of the world are much closer to Jujutsu Kaisen. Modern dark shounen has trained audiences to expect that every power comes with a cost. Every advantage has limitations, and every mistake can end very badly. Arakawa clearly understands this audience expectation. That's why the Tsugai system isn't built on partnership alone, but also on risk. The lives of paired beings are directly connected, and losing one leads to the destruction of the other. This rule instantly turns every battle into a tactical problem. It's not enough to simply become stronger, you have to analyze your opponent, look for weaknesses, and calculate the consequences of every move you make. And the secret goes even deeper than it first appears. This element immediately reminded me of the best fight moments in Jujutsu Kaisen. When you watch Megumi's battles, or see how characters use binding vows, the tension doesn't come from massive explosions, it comes from understanding the rules and consequences. The same thing happens here. Once the viewer understands the system's limitations, every victory starts to feel truly earned. And that's incredibly important, because many modern projects slowly turn into a competition of special effects. The further the story goes, the stronger the characters become, and at some point the conflict stops feeling dangerous. In Demons of the Shadow Realm, I constantly felt like consequences were actually real. And now, here's the strange part. The longer I watched this anime, the more it started to feel like a bridge between generations of anime fans. People who grew up with Shaman King will recognize the familiar warmth of human-spirit relationships. Fans of Jujutsu Kaisen will find a complex rule system, moral ambiguity, and a constant sense of threat. And fans of Arakawa's work will see something else entirely. The true heart of this story is hidden somewhere deeper. At first glance, it feels like the plot is about clan secrets, ancient powers, and battles for control over unusual abilities. But as the story develops, another layer becomes more and more obvious. Yuru has lived his entire life inside an artificially constructed version of reality, almost like a real-life version of The Truman Show. Asa essentially exists as a prisoner of her own fate, and almost every character is bound by obligations, traditions, or the decisions of previous generations. That's why the conflict feels so human. There is no absolute good or absolute evil here. There are clans that commit terrible acts for goals they themselves themselves believe are necessary, and there are heroes who are forced to choose between personal happiness and responsibility. It reminds me of some of the best moments in Naruto. For example, the conflict between Hashirama and Madara was never a simple battle between a good person and a bad person. The same principle works here. But there's another reason too, and I think it's the most underrated one. Many viewers underestimate the importance of humor in this story. After the success of so many dark series, the industry almost became afraid of lighthearted moments. It sometimes feels like creators think suffering is the only way to make a story serious. I personally believe the world already has enough suffering, especially at work. And Arakawa proves that humor can exist, and it actually works. Humor doesn't destroy drama or seriousness. When characters laugh, argue, or find themselves in absurd situations, they start to feel real. And because of that, the heavy moments hit much harder. As someone who has watched a massive amount of anime, I genuinely believe this balance is what once made Fullmetal Alchemist great. But there's one question that still remains. If the Demons of the Shadow Realm manga continues in the same direction, what's waiting for us next? Personally, I feel like Arakawa is slowly building toward a much larger conflict that goes beyond individual clans. But that's most likely something for a potential second season of the anime. And honestly, it's a bit sad to see how people today tend to discuss the future of shounen only through sales records, biggest premieres, and trending franchises. Because sometimes, a true masterpiece appears in silence. And for me, Demons of the Shadow Realm is exactly that kind of masterpiece. It takes the best elements from different eras and fuses them into one unified system. That's why, after finishing it, I was left with a very unusual feeling. I didn't see another attempt to repeat the success of popular series. I saw a work that carefully studied the history of the genre and tried to find a new form for it. And I'll definitely keep watching this amazing anime and making videos about it. So make sure to subscribe to the channel. I've got a lot more interesting anime content coming soon.